When they finally pulled apart, Femi insisted they return to the campus with him. "Please, come back," he said, his voice earnest. "Let me make it up to you. I want to eat that meal with you, just like we used to." Moreniki's face lit up with joy, and Babatunde nodded, his silent approval clear. They turned around and made their way back toward the campus together, Femi walking between them, his head held high. This time, he didn't care who saw them. He was proud to be the son of Moreniki and Babatunde. Back in his dorm room, Femi introduced his parents to Dapo and set out the food his mother had brought, filling the small room with the comforting smell of home. They sat together on the floor, just like they used to in the village, sharing stories and laughter as they ate, except that this time, Dapo was in the mix, enjoying every morsel and story. Babatunde smiled as he watched his son, his roommate and wife, occasionally gesturing in their silent language to share a thought or memory. For the first time in a long time, Femi felt at peace. The campus, the sophisticated environment, the pressure to fit in, it all faded away in the warmth of his parents' presence. They didn't need words to express their love, and Femi no longer needed to hide who he was. As the evening wore on, Femi realized how much he had missed this. The simplicity, the connection, the feeling of being truly known and loved for who he was. He had been so consumed by the need to belong in this new world that he had forgotten where he truly belonged. That night, after his parents had gone back home, Femi sat by the window in his dorm, staring out at the quiet campus. He thought about everything Dapo had said, about the lesson he had learned today. He had nearly let shame rob him of the most important people in his life, but now he understood. His parents' love, their sacrifices, their strength, these were not things to hide. They were his foundation, the reason he had come this far. And so, from that day forward, Femi vowed never to hide who he was again. He carried his parents with him in everything he did, proud of the strength they had passed on to him. When his friends asked about his family, he spoke openly, telling them about his father's quiet strength and his mother's radiant love. And if anyone pitied him or looked down on him, Femi no longer cared. He had learned a powerful lesson, that true belonging came not from hiding who you are, but from embracing it fully. And as he sat there, the memory of his parents' visit still fresh in his mind, Femi smiled. He knew that wherever life took him, he would always carry their love with him, like a flame that would never go out. Years passed, and Femi's time at university came to a triumphant end. Despite the rocky start, he had grown into a confident young man who was no longer afraid of his past or his roots. He excelled in his studies, particularly in the world of technology, where his hard work and innovative thinking earned him the admiration of professors and students alike. On the day of his graduation, Femi stood tall in his cap and gown, surrounded by his peers. The prestigious university had opened doors for him that he had only dreamed of back in the village. His hard work had paid off, and he was now ready to take on the world with the knowledge and skills he had gained. But as proud as he was of himself, nothing meant more to him than the two people sitting quietly in the audience. His parents, Babatunde and Moreniki. His mother sat with her hands folded in her lap, her face glowing with pride, even though she couldn't see the grandeur of the ceremony. His father, as always, sat with a calm and quiet dignity, watching the crowd around them, his sharp eyes taking everything in. They had traveled far once again, but this time, Femi didn't care who saw them or what anyone thought. He only cared that they were there to witness this moment. As Femi's name was called, the applause thundered through the auditorium. He walked across the stage to receive his degree, feeling the weight of his achievements settle into his hands. As he stood there, holding the certificate that symbolized years of sacrifice and perseverance, he looked out into the audience and found his parents. A lump formed in his throat as he saw them sitting there, knowing everything they had gone through to give him this opportunity. This moment wasn't just his, it was theirs too. Femi's career took off quickly after graduation. With his deep understanding of technology and his relentless drive, He found a position at a top technology firm where he thrived. His creativity and innovative solutions earned him rapid promotions, and soon, he was at the forefront of developing cutting-edge technology that was changing the world. Every project he worked on, every problem he solved, was another step toward the success he had always dreamed of. But no matter how far he went in his career, Femi never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the nights sitting by the fire with his parents, the quiet lessons of resilience and love they had taught him. He saved his money carefully, building a future not just for himself, but for them as well. His success wasn't just his to enjoy, it was something he wanted to share with the people who had given him everything. And so, one day, after years of hard work and dedication, Femi was able to do something he had always dreamed of. He had saved enough money to fly his parents to one of the best hospitals in the country, a place known for its world-class doctors and specialists. He wanted to see if there was any possibility that their disabilities, his mother's blindness and his father's deafness, could be treated or managed. The day of the hospital visit was filled with anticipation and hope. Femi, his heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and anxiety, accompanied his parents to the hospital. It was an overwhelming experience for all of them. For so long, they had accepted their conditions as part of their lives, never imagining that anything could change. But Femi had always held on to a glimmer of hope. Perhaps with the advances in modern medicine and technology, there was a way to give them back something they had lost. The doctors conducted a series of tests, each one more advanced than the last. Femi watched anxiously as his parents were examined, praying that the results would offer them something, anything, that could improve their lives. He knew that no matter the outcome, they would still be the strong, resilient people they had always been. But if there was even a small chance that something could be done, he wanted to give them that chance. After hours of waiting, the doctors finally gathered with Femi and his parents to discuss the results. For Morenike, the news was life-changing. The doctors explained that her blindness, while severe, could potentially be reversed with a cornea transplant. It was a complex procedure, and there were no guarantees. But the possibility of her regaining her sight after so many years was something Femi could hardly believe. "There's a chance?" Femi asked, his voice thick with emotion. The doctor nodded. "Yes, with a successful cornea transplant and proper rehabilitation, your mother may regain her sight. The process will take time, months in fact, between the surgery and the recovery period. But it's possible." Morenike sat in silence for a moment, her hands resting in her lap. The idea of seeing again, of being able to witness the world around her after so many years in darkness, was overwhelming. She had learned to live without sight, to navigate the world with her heart and her other senses. But now, this new possibility stirred something deep within her. She reached out for Femi's hand. "If this is possible, my son, if I can see your face, then let's do it." Femi smiled, tears filling his eyes as he held his mother's hand tightly. "We'll do it, Mama. We'll do whatever it takes." The months that followed were filled with hope and patience. Morenike underwent the cornea transplant, and the surgery was a success. But the doctors were careful to manage expectations. Her sight would return gradually, and it would take time for her eyes to adjust to seeing again. The road ahead was long, but Femi and his parents were ready for the journey. Every week, Femi accompanied his mother to her checkups, watching closely as the doctors monitored her progress. Slowly, day by day, Morenike's world began to shift from darkness to light. At first it was just shadows and blurs, but gradually, the shapes around her became clearer. One day, months after the surgery, as they sat in the hospital room during a routine checkup, Morenike's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time in decades, she saw her son's face. It wasn't perfect. Her vision was still adjusting, but she could see him. The tears that welled up in her eyes were not of sadness, but of overwhelming joy. "Femi," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I can see you." Femi, unable to speak, knelt beside his mother's chair, his own tears streaming down his face. He smiled, his heart swelling with gratitude for this moment, for this miracle that he had never thought possible. Babatunde, who had always communicated with his wife through touch and sound, watched silently, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Though he had accepted long ago that their lives would be different, he too was moved by this moment of unexpected grace. For Babatunde, the news was equally hopeful. The doctors explained that while his deafness was profound, advances in cochlear implants could potentially give him partial hearing. It wouldn't be perfect, but it could allow him to hear certain sounds, voices, music, the laughter of his son. When Femi heard this, he looked at his father, his heart pounding. Babatunde, though quiet, had always communicated through touch and gestures, never needing sound to express his love. But now, the idea that he might hear his son's voice, even just a little, filled the room with emotion. Babatunde smiled softly, reaching for his son's hand. He signed, "I have never needed to hear to know love. But if this is possible, I would like to try." Femi's heart swelled with pride and hope. The next steps would involve surgery and rehabilitation, a long process that would take patience and determination, but Babatunde was willing to try. Months passed, and after a successful surgery, Babatunde began the process of learning to hear through the implant. The first time he heard even the faintest sound, it was overwhelming. The doctors had prepared him for the fact that it wouldn't be like normal hearing, but even the muted, distorted sounds were a revelation. The day Babatunde heard Femi's voice for the first time, truly heard it, was a day none of them would ever forget. It wasn't clear or loud, but it was there, like a whisper of the wind. Babatunde's eyes filled with tears, and Femi, unable to hold back his emotions, embraced his father tightly. "I love you, Papa," Femi whispered, knowing the words reached him in a way they never had before. Babatunde didn't need to respond with words. The smile on his face, the warmth in his eyes, said everything. For Morenike and Babatunde, life after the hospital visit wasn't dramatically different, but it was filled with a renewed sense of possibility. Morenike now had her sight restored, and though it wasn't perfect, it was more than she had ever hoped for. She could see her son's face, the beauty of the world around her, and the home they had built together. Babatunde, though still largely silent, had glimpses of sound in his life for the first time. Femi's heart was full. He had achieved success in the world, but more importantly, he had given back to the two people who had shaped him into the man he had become. His journey had been long, filled with struggles and moments of shame, but he had triumphed over it all. Chapter 6. Continued. A journey to healing. His journey had been long, filled with struggles and moments of shame, but he had emerged stronger, proud of his roots, and determined to make his parents' lives better. As they sat together one evening, back in the village where it all began, Femi looked at his parents and smiled. Morenike, now able to see the soft flicker of the firelight, marveled at the colors of the evening sky, something she hadn't seen in decades. She turned her eyes toward her son, drinking in the sight of him, the man he had become, the boy who had once run through the village with dreams in his heart. She still couldn't believe that she was seeing him now, his face a blend of her own features and his father's strength. "I never imagined I would see you like this, Femi," she said quietly, her voice filled with awe. "I feel like I'm dreaming." Femi smiled, his heart swelling with emotion. "It's no dream, Mama. You deserve this. You both do." Babatunde, sitting beside them, placed his hand on Femi's shoulder, his familiar silent gesture of affection. Though he still relied mostly on their old ways of communicating, he occasionally caught the sound of Femi's voice or the rustling of the leaves through his cochlear implant. It was a strange new world for him, one he was still learning to navigate, but he embraced it as he had embraced every challenge in his life, with quiet determination. As they sat there, surrounded by the peaceful rhythms of the village, Femi reflected on everything they had been through. His parents had taught him the true meaning of strength, of love, of resilience. They had faced the world with their disabilities, not as limitations, but as challenges to be met with dignity and grace. And now, after all the years of sacrifice, he had been able to give something back to them. A chance at a fuller life. Moreniki's sight continued to improve over the following months, and every day brought new discoveries. She marveled at the faces of the people she had only known through touch and sound, at the vibrant colors of the world she had long since forgotten. The first time she saw her own reflection in a mirror, she smiled softly, running her fingers over the lines that had formed over the years. "I don't mind the wrinkles," she said with a laugh. "They tell the story of a life well lived." For Babatunde, the journey was more subtle. His hearing, though not perfect, allowed him to experience moments he had never known before. His wife's voice, Femi's laughter, the sound of the wind in the trees. It was a new chapter for him, and while it was sometimes overwhelming, he embraced it with the same quiet strength he always had. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun set over the village, Moreniki turned to Femi, her heart full of gratitude. "You've given us so much, Femi," she said, her voice steady. "More than we ever dreamed of. But what makes us proudest is not what you've achieved out there in the world, but the man you've become. You've never forgotten where you came from." Babatunde nodded in agreement, his hand resting gently on his son's shoulder. He signed, "You are our greatest achievement." Femi felt a lump rise in his throat. He had always been driven to succeed, not just for himself, but for them, for the people who had given him everything. And now, as he looked at his parents, their love and pride surrounding him like a warm embrace, he realized that this was the true measure of his success. "I am who I am because of you," Femi said quietly, his voice full of emotion. "Everything I've done, everything I've become, is because of the love you gave me." They sat there together, the three of them, as the sky darkened and the stars began to appear, one by one. It was a simple moment, but one filled with the kind of peace and contentment that only comes after a long journey. Femi knew that life would continue to present challenges. There would always be obstacles to overcome, moments of doubt and difficulty. But with his parents by his side, and the lessons they had taught him in his heart, he was ready for whatever the future held. And as the stars shone brightly overhead, Femi felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the journey, for his family, and for the love that had guided him every step of the way. Femi's success in the world of technology continued to grow with each passing year. His reputation as an innovator, a problem solver, and a leader had spread far beyond the borders of the country. But despite his rising fame and fortune, Femi remained humble and grounded. The lessons of his childhood, resilience, humility, and the importance of family had never left him. One day, after a particularly successful year in his career, Femi decided it was time to fulfill another dream, one he had been quietly working toward for years. He had saved enough money to build something special for his parents, something that would reflect his gratitude for all they had done for him. Back in the village, where his roots were deep and his heart still resided, Femi oversaw the construction of a grand house for his parents. It wasn't just any house. This was a beautiful, spacious home with modern amenities and custom features designed specifically for their needs. Wide hallways for his father, bright open spaces that his mother could now enjoy with her restored sight, and plenty of rooms for family and friends to visit. When the house was completed, Femi arranged for a driver and a brand new car, ensuring that his parents could travel comfortably to visit friends or go to the market whenever they pleased. He hired a team of caretakers to help them with the household chores, along with workers to assist on the farm. Babatunde had always been a hard-working farmer, and though he still loved to work the land, Femi knew it was time for him to rest and enjoy the fruits of his labor. The day Femi presented the new house to his parents was filled with emotion. Moreniki stood in front of the grand home, her eyes shining as she took in the sight of the place her son had built for them. She couldn't believe it was real. The spacious rooms, the lush garden, the elegance of the design. Babatunde, though always a man of few words, couldn't hide the pride in his expression as he walked through the house. running his hands along the smooth walls and looking out over the land that had been their home for so many years. "My son," Morenike whispered, tears filling her eyes as she turned to Femi. This is more than we could have ever imagined." Femi smiled, pulling both of his parents into a tight embrace. "You've given me everything, and now it's my turn to give back. This is your home, Mama, Papa, a place where you can rest and enjoy life." Babatunde placed his hand on Femi's chest, signing, "You have made us proud beyond words." But Femi didn't stop there. He knew that the village, the place that had shaped him and his family, deserved just as much. With his newfound success, Femi began to finance several reputable projects in the village, including the construction of a new school and a medical center. He wanted the children growing up in the village to have access to the best education, and he wanted the villagers to have proper health care, something that had been lacking for so long. These projects weren't just acts of charity. They were his way of giving back to the community that had helped raise him. The village elders praised him for his generosity, and the villagers looked up to him as a role model for the younger generation. Femi's investments in the village transformed it into a place of opportunity, and he watched with pride as new businesses flourished and the village began to thrive. Amidst all of these achievements, Femi's personal life was also blossoming. During his travels and work, he had met a beautiful young woman named Amina, whose kindness and intelligence captivated him from the start. Amina was not only beautiful, but also a woman with a heart for others, much like Femi. She worked in education and was passionate about empowering young girls to pursue their dreams. Their shared values and love for their families drew them closer together. In time, Femi asked Amina to marry him, and she happily accepted. Their wedding was a celebration like no other, held in the village, surrounded by friends, family, and the entire community that had watched Femi grow from a boy into the successful man he had become. Morenike, her sight restored, wept with joy as she watched her son marry the woman of his dreams. Babatunde, standing tall beside his wife, could hear the sounds of celebration faintly through his implant, and his heart was full. The marriage of Femi and Amina was not just the union of two people, but the blending of their dreams, their passions, and their commitment to making the world a better place. Together, they continued to give back to the village and the world around them, building a legacy of love and generosity that would live on for generations. Years later, as Femi sat in the grand house he had built for his parents, surrounded by his family, he reflected on the incredible journey they had all taken. From the quiet village where it all began, to the challenges of university, to the heights of success, he had never forgotten who he was or where he came from. His parents, Morenike and Babatunde, had taught him the most important lessons of all, that love transcends any disability, that strength comes from within, and that true success is measured not by wealth, but by the difference you make in the lives of those you love. And as Femi looked out at the horizon, with his wife Amina by his side, and his parents enjoying the peace and comfort of their new life, he knew that he had fulfilled his greatest dream, to honor the people who had given him everything. Thank you for watching this story on AfroTales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.